This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today, well, we've got a special one. It's the first, real episode of Season 8, not counting the Treehouse of Horror that we covered last week. It's one of the most popular episodes of all time, so we're just gonna cut right to it. It's You Only Move Twice, and of course, joining me, as always, my partner in evil crime, Richie the Whiz Kid. How are you today, Rich?
I have to say, I've been very nervously excited about doing this episode. There's so much hype behind this episode. Hype! I know we've had a lot of requests, everybody and their dog wants to join us on this podcast. It's so overwhelming. Everybody loves this episode, and I thought, for sure, there is no way this one will live up. And I gotta say, Miles, there's a chance this one might have gone back and suplexed, I guess, for the wrestling fans, their favorite episode of all time.
What a maneuver Richie just pulled out.
This one might have risen above Limit of Troy for me right now. But we got a whole podcast to talk about that. That might not even be a tease. I might have already said it. Let me throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the Marianne's hammocks. He'll get in it with you, ladies. It is Miles.
Sir, you nailed it. I mean, just 100...
About the hammock?
Yeah, exactly. I will get in the hammock with you. But no, just
with you fellas.
As long as we're in the hammock district. On 3rd. This episode is, if you want to go for such a word, if it exists, this might be what you would call a perfect Simpsons episode. It's got a story for everybody. It has the art. It has the heart. It has the smart. It has it all, man. And it's really, really good. This one debuted on March 11th, 1996. And note on what you said real quick. I will go ahead and just address that elephant in the room. Literally, this was the episode that was the most requested episode for everybody that I've ever reached out to, and some people who reached out to me asking if they could be a part of this episode. And it was, just for lack of a better word, overwhelming. So sorry everyone. The only fair thing I thought to do was to just have Richie and I do it, because it was just a lot of requests.
I feel like people's feelings might have been hurt if we didn't pick them and pick somebody else for this episode.
That was honestly my concern. I didn't know how to pick somebody in a fair way without doing some sort of elaborate lottery system or whatever. But there are still tons of other great episodes.
$5 a ticket, folks.
Damn it, that's what we should have
redo
done.
This episode.
That's what we should have done. It could have been a Patreon reward. Which, now that we just told you how we said no to all of you, check out our Patreon and support us, please. Patreon.com/bestdarndiddly.
We're occasionally nice people.
With a sinister B-plot.
Yes.
Alright, so let's talk about this episode. First, I'm going to say this one had commentary by Josh Weinstein, Bill Oakley, those were the showrunners, Matt Groening, you may have heard of him, Mike Anderson, the director, Ken Keeler, who actually is the one that wrote the Scorpio song at the end of the credits, and Dan Castellaneta, who played, obviously, Homer, but also James Bont.
I'm sorry, I'm just replaying the whole episode in my mind as you're talking about everybody.
I honestly watched this one, a couple extra times that I didn't really need to for the sake of a review, but I just really enjoy this episode so much. And it brings back something else I've missed. Richie, did you even recognize the building they were in when Bart Simpson was writing with that little white stick on that giant blackboard? Because we haven't seen a chalk gag in quite some time.
Yeah, I feel like they thought, since we haven't done it in 18 episodes, let's go ahead and throw one in there.
I feel like since it was the first opening canon episode of The Simpsons, they felt a little bit of pressure, I would imagine, to probably put one of those in.
It's not a new season if you don't have a chalkboard gag, which I think immediately in the next episode we might go back to not
having him again. The chalkboard gag in this instance is I did not learn everything I need to know in kindergarten. And then also we had a couch gag, which I think was a new one because I do not recall seeing this one in the past. I could be wrong. There wasn't note on either the chalk or the couch gag during this commentary. They were talking about something else I'll bring up in just a minute, but the couch gag on this one was the family all safely parachutes in for a nice, comfortable landing on the couch, except for Homer, who apparently flat, face first, no shoot, just a hard bump right on the living room floor.
He's unbreakable again.
Ooh, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there's something I want to mention with one of our other theories that we have running on this show that we're going to have to talk about later. But for now, we open up with a beautiful day in Springfield, and Waylon Smithers is coming out of his apartment singing to himself.
I work for Monty Burns. Monty Burns.
And as he's jauntily singing down the street, happy to go to work for his employer, a recruiter comes up from the Globex Corporation and says that they're interested in hiring him. They offer him an impressive salary, health benefits, and that goes for his life partner as well.
They did their research on Smithers.
They sure did.
What's wrong with this country? Can't a man walk down the street without being offered a job?
That's stated for the wrong reasons, because nobody's being offered jobs currently. But no,
Yeah.
that is a very good joke, however. Since Smithers denies the new job, however, the Globex Corporation has to go from the most tenured employee to the second most tenured employee. One that's been at the power plant for 10 years, Rich.
Carl and Lenny?
It is, of course, Homer Simpson. We find this out because Homer walks into the kitchen and we just hear Marge's response. You took a new job in a strange town without discussing it with your family?
Of course not. I wouldn't do that. Why not?
We have roots here, Homer. We have friends and family and library cards. Bart's lawyer is here.
But Marge, this is a chance for me to fulfill my lifelong dream.
And I do really appreciate that. I think this is a Josh and Bill callback type of situation, because how many times in the past have we heard Homer talk about his lifelong dream, and this time Marge actually calls him out on it. What lifelong dream?
Promise not to laugh? I always wanted to own the Dallas Cowboys.
And of course we see Bart and Lisa snickering in the background. Marge really doesn't like the idea of uplifting their roots and just getting out of town. In fact, she's quite found herself in a nice little rut there, as I think she described it. And I like Homer's just like, just bring the rut with you, honey.
One of the other reasons this episode might now be my new favorite after reviewing it a little closer is it only mentions 2 NFL teams in this episode, Miles, and they happen to be my favorite 2 NFL teams. So good job for you, Simpsons writers.
That's very true, and I definitely have some more to talk about when we get to the end of the episode. But for right now,
Jones isn't going to sell the Cowboys to you, Homer. Sorry.
We learn a little bit about Cypress Creek, the tale of one city.
Ooh.
I like that Homer immediately, this is Homer's like promotional video to sell the family on this concept, and Homer's immediately bored with it, and Marge has to be like, Homer, you're the one trying to talk us into moving to this place.
Oh yeah, that's right. Let's watch this.
It's really cheesy VHS quality video. It like shows like a rundown town, and then with the magic of video editing, it turns things like parking meters into pine trees.
And homeless people into mailboxes.
That's a like dark episode of Black Mirror right there.
Yep, there you go.
Cypress Creek, where dreams come true.
Your dreams may vary from those of Globex Corporation, its subsidiaries and shareholders.
And instantly we see that not only was Homer now in on the idea, but it seems that Marge and the kids actually seem a little bit more sold on this concept. And surprisingly, the Simpsons look into selling their home.
Yeah, it takes a twist there because you honestly don't expect. I remember the first time I ever watched this, you definitely don't expect the whole family to fall in line behind one of Homer's crazy ideas, but like it opens up the story for all these possibilities.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to go ahead and talk real quick about, from the commentary, the thing I mentioned they were discussing earlier. This episode was actually born from 3 big ideas that kind of got married together. 3 independent ideas. One of which was the Simpsons moving. And they really wanted it to feel real. They even mentioned in the commentary that more than likely, if they were going for, without that part of the story being part of it, the moving being such a big part of what created this idea in the first place, there was talks that they might just cut right through, the part where the Simpsons are attempting to sell their home. But they really wanted it to stick with, this is a brand new episode of season 8. Again, excluding the Treehouse of Horror. This is the first, canon episode. And they really wanted the audience to bite on the idea that they might actually be relocating the Simpsons.
Huh. I don't remember how I felt about that part when I was a kid. I'm really that's a very interesting idea, but yeah, I could see that working. Maybe.
So that's the concept. That idea was put with the other big idea that they had, where they wanted Homer to have a new boss, and not just a new boss, but like a new age sort of hippie boss, like a Steve Jobs or a Silicon Valley type of boss that would just be the polar opposite of what he was used to working with Mr. Burns. And then third big idea that just ended up getting intertwined with these two in the most perfect way. They wanted Homer to meet a person that was a really great guy and a good friend, but happened to be a James Bond-esque supervillain on the side.
Well, and then you tie in the fact that he actually gives Homer really good advice a lot in this episode too, and Homer's excelling, which everyone loves to see. So it's a perfect storm.
Homer lands the type of management position that gives you the type of cushy income where you can buy frivolous things like autographed hats from overpriced memorabilia stores.
Hey, he's a guy like him.
This might be the most Homer has flourished in any episode, and that might be why. I mean that in a very Homer way. There's obviously other events. I mean, he's been very successful in a lot of different
Bowling
things.
alley.
No business being. But, this is Homer's dream. This
version
is
of Homer's dream.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean that it's his lifelong dream. I mean, this is what we know as the character being put into a position where he does what he already does at his job, but instead of being constantly scolded and reprimanded, he's rewarded and encouraged. I mean, it's perfect. I love this episode.
Well, let's keep getting into it then.
I agree. Thank you. So, in response to this Cypress Creek video that we've just watched, Marge points out that it seems a lot nicer than Springfield. Lisa even says, yeah, did you notice how the people weren't shoving or knocking each other down? I've never been to a place like that before.
Push, me neither.
Bart pushes her out of the way to say that. So the Simpsons do, in fact, end up putting their house on the market, but first, they notice that their house is not in great condition. There's a lot of things crumbling away, and at one point, Bart even falls through from the second floor to the living room. His feet are dangling, and Marge has to help push him back up with a broom.
Yeah, it's the house isn't looking too good. It's gonna be tough to sell that one.
Surprisingly, though, it still is somehow out of Otto's price range. He knows this, of course, when he notices that it has windows.
Oh, wow. Windows. This place is too expensive for me.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it because that doesn't count. What I just said there doesn't count. But this was in consideration for something, but it isn't. So that doesn't count. But I really do appreciate this joke where we see Apu rings the doorbell. Hello, I am not interested in buying your house, but I would like to use your restroom, flip through your magazines, rearrange your carefully shelved items, and handle your food products in an unsanitary manner. Ha! Now you know how it feels. And he runs off.
Thank you. Come again. And Homer's so happy when he says that, too.
So sincere.
Yeah.
Ooh, really, really good. I think that I think that hits home with not just convenience store workers, but just like any retail employees at all. Like people just have no concept of like going in and like unfolding clothes or like leaving things on, putting fingerprints on glass counters, things of that nature. It's the worst.
I usually put my nose up to the glass and make myself look like a little pig.
That's exactly what they appreciate, Richie.
Yep.
So Marge comes to the conclusion that even if they were able to sell the house, they're still not even going to come close to paying off the mortgage. So in a flash, Homer and Marge together come to a realization. Hey! In the next scene, we see Homer nailing an abandoned sign over the front door.
I'm glad that both of their minds went to that spot.
That's pretty good.
It makes it a lot funnier than if it was just Homer.
We see the Simpsons are packing up all of their belongings into a little whatever. It's like a U-Haul knockoff. And that's when Ned Flanders comes over and has a couple of questions. Hey, Homer, about those things you borrowed from me over the years. The TV trays, the power sander, the downstairs bathtub. You gonna be needing those things in Cypress Creek?
Yes.
Oh,
Oakley dokley.
Oakley dokley.
Was that in consideration for you too, Miles?
Oh, I love how much of just like in control Homer has of Ned Flanders, and everything, of course, that Homer's is packing is basically Ned's.
Wait, Miles, stay with me here. What if Homer? Maybe we've said this before.
Oh God, I'm scared.
What if Homer is Truman from the Truman Show, and everyone else is an actor? So like Ned is an actor, but he has to go along with it, and that's why Homer always has so much control over him.
And Hank Scorpio is just in place to prevent Homer from being able to leave the bubble where his show is taped.
Yeah, they just make another town next to the next part of the bubble. They're literally under a bubble in the movie. Oh my gosh, Miles. This whole thing is just a TV show. It's probably called something like The Family of Homer or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder what their last name is.
I don't know.
Okay, well, moving on. The Simpsons are off. They're packed up. They're driving through the town, and the entire town is greeting them farewell. Homer actually says, I'm gonna miss Springfield. This town's been awfully good to us.
No, it hasn't, Dad. That's why we're leaving.
Oh, yeah. And then he pokes his head out the window. So long, Stinktown! But everybody in town's being so nice to him. They're like, farewell, guys. I'm gonna miss you.
Even all his barfly buddies are like, we're going to miss you, Homer.
I feel like Milhouse and Bart would be more upset than they show them to be. I think they like just skipped that because they didn't have any time to really dive into that. Plus, they also knew that they weren't really moving, so it'd be fine.
And he's getting another Milhouse.
Yeah, that's true. He has a replacement already lined up. Fun fact from the commentary, up until this point, they had not considered, they were so involved in the idea of them moving that they sort of kind of forgot to include Santa's Little Helper and Snowball 2 in any of the animation. So they actually had to go back and add them into all of these shots just at various places so that as they were packing and whatnot, they ended up in the car moving along with them so that they weren't left behind.
That makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the episode, I noticed when they were coming back that Santa's Little Helper is just walking beside them without a leash, and like Lisa is holding Snowball too. And for some reason, I just
that was definitely a last-minute addition. Yeah,
very obedient.
And they
Santa's
point
Little
out,
Helper.
Oh, very much so. Is there not a squirrel anywhere nearby? But that does, in fact, bring us to the end of our first act. We will be back for Act 2 after a quick word from some buddies of ours.
Good evening, future passengers. Are you ready to sit back, relax, and join us on a ride of epic proportions through the mystical land of randomness?
Am I a serial killer if I eat Lucky Charms?
What would it be like if horror characters ran a gym? Who would run spin class?
When a shark jumps out of the water, is it like suffocating for that split second?
So join us every week for a brand new Derailment with Goobs, Ripkin, and Jenny Bean.
You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Derailers.
And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and also on YouTube. Have a great night or day, folks.
We come back for our second act, and we see the Simpsons driving through the majestic countryside, and it seems like everything is just perfect. They're literally in awe, ooh, ah, ooh, as they are driving on their way to their destination of 15201 Maple Systems Road.
Does that have any significant meaning at all, or was it just a random number? Did they say anything in the commentary?
They mentioned that they just thought it was really funny. I don't remember if they actually had directly said it was in reference to anything.
I do have to say, Miles, Cypress Creek either seems like the best or the absolute worst place to have a disc golf course.
Especially if you have whatever Lisa has.
Oh, God, yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah, for sure. They pull up to a house that is probably 3 times the size of their home in Springfield, if not larger. As soon as they walk in the front door, they see this immaculate living room, and I love that Bart says, "I call this room." Pretty much as soon as the family walks through the front door and closes it, almost immediately behind them, the doorbell rings, and they open it to a man greeting them with a gift basket, welcoming them to their new home.
Hi, I'm Hank Scorpio, your boss.
Wow, my boss.
Don't call me that word. I don't like things that elevate me above the other people. I'm just like you. Or sure, I come in later in the day, I get paid a lot more, and I take longer vacations, but I don't like the word boss.
We can see a very, very happy and energetic person standing at the door. And he is the type of guy that kind of just talks nonstop. In fact, he goes from that statement immediately pointing to his feet.
Hey, look at my feet. You like those moccasins? Look in your closet. There's a pair for you. Don't like them? Then neither do I. Huh. Get the hell out of here.
Them out the door.
Ever see a guy say goodbye to a shoe?
Yes, once. Just now?
Yeah, I've always loved that moment.
Mr. Scorpio, the house is almost too good for us. I keep expecting to get the bums rush.
We don't have bums in our town, Marge, and if we did, they wouldn't rush. They'd be allowed to go at their own pace.
So, Hank actually has to excuse himself here because he's currently taking part in a fun run. Keep in mind, previously he was wearing moccasins. Now he's barefoot.
I'll see you tomorrow at work, Homer, although I don't like to call it work. Do-do-do. Do-do-do.
So the next day, we get our first look at what life will be like for everyone in the family. And for Marge, at least, it looks like things are definitely improving.
Okay, the oven is cleaning itself. The autovac's on dirt patrol. Roombas before Roombas. And Maggie's enjoying her swingamajig.
We see Maggie swinging in an automatic chair-like swing, and she is desperately reaching for the on and off switch, which brings me to my question. Are Magical Maggie's magical powers relevant or controlled somehow? Are they somehow attached to her being in Springfield? When she's removed out of town, she's unable to help herself escape? That seems very unmagical Maggie-like.
Or maybe Hank Scorpio is just that much of an evil genius. I mean, He knew Marge's name, he knew everything about Smithers, and then they just applied Homer's name to the same sentence. This guy does his research. He could be Lex Luthor making something out of kryptonite to keep the hero from being able to save the day.
All right, that is officially my favorite thing you've ever said on this podcast. Congratulations, sir.
You're welcome. It tracks.
No, we're going with that. That's what happened. There's whatever stops Magical Maggie's powers was built into that swingamajig, and that's why this theory still holds all the water.
But that means there's something out there that's anti-Maggie.
And what is it? We will have to keep diving deep into our research through all 32 plus seasons.
Oh, but more importantly, Miles, Marge is done with all her housework, and it's only 9:30.
Yeah, that's the thing I said, is like Marge's life going to get better. Seems that only time will tell. For now, we're going to check in with Homer, who is being toured around by his new boss, Hank Scorpio. You'll notice, my new best friend, that we're pretty casual around here.
Yes, sir. I will notice that. Very casual, Mr. Scorpion.
Don't call me that. It's Scorpio. But you can call me Hank. Would you mind hanging my coat up on the wall, please? And we see Hank hand his coat over to Homer.
Let's see.
But as we look around, we see that it's one big circular room, and the entire outside of it is all window. Relax, Homer. At Globex, we don't believe in walls. Matter of fact, I didn't even give you my coat. He looks down and his hands are empty. Hank is now wearing his coat again.
Backwards.
Yeah, like he just threw it on quickly.
This is one of my favorite animation moments in all of Simpsons, because it's a complete visual gag in the way they have the camera aimed, quote unquote, but it's so damn funny. Everyone knows what we're talking about.
It's so good, but it is a moment that I legitimately laughed out loud like every time I watched it and saw this bit. Like, just can't help myself.
Have we talked about Albert Brooks?
We have not talked about Albert Brooks, and now seems like a great time to do so. Albert Brooks played the character of Hank Scorpio, and by far, out of all the characters that Albert Brooks has played, Hank Scorpio constantly ranks among the fans' favorite for all the characters he's portrayed, just because he's so good. And
so charismatic that it plays very well.
Very much so. And just like his other roles that he's done, like I know they mentioned this when he did Jacques back in season 2, that he loves to ad-lib and improvise in the scenes, and he had so many takes that he'll usually give about 2 to 3 jokes for every place that there's one. So much so that there is actually a track that exists, and as what I've been able to find, it has not been released publicly, but it does exist. The creators of the show have, in fact, verified that it's there. There is enough material that Albert Brooks improvised and ad-lib that they could have, if they had wanted to, created 2 completely independent episodes based on the Hank Scorpio character. That all of that B-roll is on its own reel, and they've all heard it, and it's just fantastic stuff.
I hope one day they release it, maybe after the Simpsons are finally done, just because it would be great just to hear that. It doesn't have to be an actual episode, I just want to hear it.
Yeah, but again, just incredible that he's giving so much energy, and that's such a fast-paced, high-energy, uplifting, and charismatic character. And he delivers it's perfect. Again, I know I keep saying that word, but this really is about as close to a perfect Simpsons episode as you can get.
You can only say perfect twice.
That's exactly right. Perfect way to put that, Richie.
Damn it.
We keep the visual gags coming because as the tour around the office continues, we see that Homer and Hank are walking side by side, but when we pan out, it turns out that they're actually walking on treadmills right next to a window. Then they step off the treadmill and are standing together, motionless, but on a automatic floor. So basically, they walk to go nowhere and stand to go places.
Yep. Again, great visual gag.
During this discussion, however, Homer reveals something very intimate to his new boss. He tells him his lifelong dream, which is, of course, to own the Dallas Cowboys, the very thing that got him laughed at by his own family earlier in the episode.
And Hank doesn't laugh at him, man. This is the first moment where, it's kind of a sweet moment without, having anything said for a few seconds.
This is to your point earlier, what you were talking about, where Hank is actually a good friend in a lot of ways to Homer. He actually does offer some very solid advice, and this is actually one of them, because he even says, I bet people laugh at you when you tell them that, don't they, Homer? Well, you know what? They laughed at me the first time I wore jeans with a sport coat, but now everybody does it.
No, every rich millionaire in town does it.
And finally, we actually step into Homer's new workstation where we continue the conversation between these two. Hank explains Homer's new job is going to be to manage and motivate his team. He has to give him all the benefits of all of his years of experience.
Don't worry, that won't take long.
Homer, the key to motivation is trust. Let me show you what I mean. I want you to close your eyes and fall backwards, and I'll catch you. That's going to show you what trust is all about. Ready?
Right.
3, 2,
Ring, 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 ring.
1 second. Hank goes to answer the phone, which of course he had just said 1 second, implying to wait, but also the word one. Oh my god, the guy's on the floor. That was a phone call. Don't chalk that up to mistrust now. Hank has to go and deal with an emergency upstairs. It turns out that it seems somebody ate part of Hank's lunch, and he had to go and investigate the matter. I'm going to leave everything to you. We're on a tight schedule. You keep them motivated. This is actually a really funny visual gag that is pretty much intentionally left in for the benefit of animators, because they could not get a good angle with Homer and Hank talking that didn't have these 3 employees in the shot. So what they did is they put 1 second of animation to make it make sense in a funny way, where the 3 employees actually have their heads down on the desk. And for that 1 split second, you can see when they pan out, the employees suddenly pop up and start working quickly.
It's always, it's interesting to hear how they do, especially like in new scenes, the animation everywhere. This must have been a nightmare of an episode for the animators.
Well, I enjoy that it's just almost like a meta joke in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Really, really smart stuff. And it's really funny because it is like they just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I do like this, though. Homer's quite great at keeping his team motivated.
Are you guys working?
Yes, sir, Mr. Simpson.
Could you work any harder than this?
Sure thing, boss. And all 3 of them just start speeding up their typing.
Hey, call me Homer.
And Homer's already starting to be a little bit of a chip off the old block of his new boss. He's taken some of that casual relationship advice, or using that same idea to try to relate with his new employees. And so far, it seems to be working.
They are going faster.
For now, though, it's time to check in with our Simpson children. We have Bart and Lisa's first day at Cypress Creek Elementary School. And Bart is already seeming to manage to fit in pretty well. He's doing his armpit farts, and even one of the new kids is like, wow, you got a fresh sound. It'll play well at this school.
Hey, Bart, do you have a best friend yet? Because I've been looking for someone to boss me around.
And a kid that looks a lot like Milhouse is who says this. So there's a really funny joke, and it's really funny due to the fact of how outdated it is, because on the sign of the elementary school, it advertises a website, which is studynet.edu. And in 1996, this was really funny because websites weren't really that common at this time, and the idea that an elementary school would actually have a website was downright absurd. So the joke was that this school was so advanced and so such a good school that they would actually have their own website. Now, of course, this joke aged rather quickly, as it wasn't that many years later that pretty much it would be unheard of for a school not to have a website at this point.
The other dated joke is coming up right now when they do this thing that you young people won't know about called cursive.
Hey, I know a few. Hell, damn, bitch. I do really like that. It seems, however, that Bart might be pretty ill-prepared for the 4th grade level of Cypress Creek Elementary School, because he doesn't really know any of the things the kids are going over, including cursive, of course, because I do like that. He's actually cut off. Bart's like, I do know hell and damn and bit.
You might be able to learn a little bit more if you're in our remedial environment.
So Bart finds himself in the Leg Up program, which is, of course, it's the slow kids class is what it is.
Poor Bart.
Things seem like they've taken a pretty sharp downward turn for Bart, but hey, remember we left Marge and everything was great. All of the chores were taking care of themselves, so when we see Marge again, she decides she's going to do a little bit of gardening. But as she comes out with her water bucket and her shovel or whatever her gardening tools are, the garden starts self-watering and self-fertilizing and essentially self-taking care of itself, leaving Marge once again with nothing to do. And that brings us to the most debated joke in the episode, and this is the one that I'm on the fence about. It's this and one other that I want to give the title to my favorite joke. This is the build up to it, so I get to wait a little bit longer. But this joke is set up here because when we see Marge gets bored, she decides to pour herself a glass of wine during the middle of the day. And we get that image with those dreadful low notes that kind of give you an ominous feeling that this might not be going a good direction.
Which is, it's supposed to paint the picture that Marge isn't necessarily happy with perfection.
Well, it's that she's bored and turning to alcohol.
Yeah, I get where you're going, but we're trying to get the downfall of everybody else here, so...
Right, it's not going as picture perfect as it seems from the outside looking in.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to Bart, who's meeting his new classmates. So what are you in for?
I moved here from Canada, and they think I'm slow, eh?
Shout out to
both
all...
because it's funny and because of all of our friends.
Yeah, shout out to all of our Canadian somebodies and all of our Canadian podcast friends and all of our Canadian listeners. This is a great joke, and obviously I think that you guys...
You'll all catch up eventually.
You guys get a lot of this memed right in your direction, so I'm not even going to dig in too hard because The Simpsons did such a good job for us.
Gosh.
We also meet Dot. I fell off the jungle gym, and when I woke up, I was in here. And finally, the last kid in class is a young man by the name of Warren.
I start fires.
God, that's terrifying. The teacher greets the class. Okay, now, everyone take out your safety pencil and a circle of paper. This week, I hope we can finish our work on the letter A.
Let me get this straight. We're behind the rest of our class, and we're going to catch up to them by going slower than they are. Cuckoo.
And then all of the kids in class start imitating Bart. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo.
Stop it! Warren, Melvin, Gary, Dot, Gordy.
Listen, lady, I'm supposed to be in the 4th grade.
Seems to me that someone's got a case of the spostas.
Oh. And then we see Warren's patting Bart on the back, but it's 3 pats as if he was, like, comforting him, and then the 4th one is just a hard smack.
Warren! I've always loved Bart's comment there about catching up by going slower.
Bart makes a great point for a remedial kid.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
No, I mean, it really is. It's a commentary in a lot of ways, and I think it's really fun. But again, this is to paint the picture. We've now seen that Maggie isn't super happy because she's found someone who knows her secrets. Marge is getting bored. Bart, I guess, is also getting bored because of his remedial class. But hey, at least things are still going great for Homer. And it seems like Lisa's very happy as well because she's actually taking a walk through the woods.
Hello, Mr. Chipmunk. You're a northern reticulated chipmunk. Yes, you are. You are so reticulated.
Hoo, hoo.
Hi, Mrs. Owl. You're out kind of early. La 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 la.
And the owl actually scoops up the chickmunk right behind Lisa's back as she walks away happily. They're like drawn almost like Disney-esque, the animals, so they're so cute and adorable, and then so it's really funny when the owl like scoops up the chipmunk.
While being controlled by Bart.
Okay. I'm still not in with you on that one.
You know, I think that they could sell the idea of staying here if at least one other person other than Homer was actually happy and it meant that much to the rest of the family.
Well, it's good that they have Lisa then, I guess, for now. But we cut back to Homer, And again, things just couldn't be better. Mr. Scorpio, or Hank, is happy that the productivity is up 2%, and he's giving all of the credit to Homer's motivational techniques. Like donuts, and possibly more donuts to come.
That's when they see the spin zone, Miles. I want to go to the spin zone.
I hate this joke so much because of how accurate this joke is. All of those memorabilia stores are the exact same. It's a bunch of stuff that you're not quite sure is legit, and it's all very, very expensive.
And they all have baseballs made out of Secretariat?
More importantly, though, Tom Landry's hat! And it's autographed! To Berman's Dry Cleaning. Best wishes, Tom Landry.
Why don't you buy it?
I can't buy that. Only management-type guys with big salaries like me can afford things like that. Guys like me. I'm a guy like me. And we immediately cut to Homer back at work, who is now giving a heartfelt coach-like speech to his 3 employees while wearing his Tom Landry hat. But it seems like it might be the 4th quarter for this crew because they are looking gassed, and Homer is realizing that something's wrong, and they let him know that they're a little bit fatigued, and that gives Homer an idea.
He's going to see the boss.
Hi, Homer. What can I do for you?
Sir, I need to know where I can get some business hammocks.
Hammocks? My goodness, what an idea! Why didn't I think of that? Hammocks! Homer, there's 4 places. There's the Hammock Hut, that's on 3rd.
Uh-huh.
There's Hammocks R Us, that's on 3rd too. You got Put Your Butt There, that's on 3rd. Swing Low Chariot. Matter of fact, they're all in the same complex. It's the Hammock Complex on 3rd.
Oh, the Hammer District.
That's right.
I think if this was done any other way, this would not be a funny moment. But the way Brooks does that dialogue makes it funny. Like, it's nonsense.
It is absolutely ridiculous that this town has a hammock district. Like, come on. Also, a really fun story from the commentary. During the table read of this episode, the first time Dan Castellaneta came across the word hammock, he accidentally read it as ham-hock, which also would have worked. Is very, very funny.
There's a ham hock district.
I just thought that was hilarious. He says that he sometimes flubs table reads. So right after Hank gives Homer this hammock advice, his secretary informs him that he has the link up ready. Homer, 1 second. I gotta take care of this. Very important. Be right back.
Fine.
We see this giant map of the world open up to reveal a giant television screen, and it looks like it's the UN that he's talking to. Homer's actually in the background during the scene, and we're kind of focusing on Hank for a moment. Homer is actually just looking out the window, scratching his butt during this entire sequence.
So everyone can see him scratching his butt in the background from the UN side, I think.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This is Scorpio. I have the doomsday device. You have 72 hours to deliver the gold, or you'll face the consequences. And to prove I'm not bluffing, watch this. He pulls out a remote control and pushes a button.
Oh my god, to the 59th Street Bridge!
Maybe it just collapsed on its own.
We can't take that chance.
You always say that. I want to take a chance. Collapsed on its own. You have 72 hours. See ya. Back to hammocks. My friend, you know, there's a little place called Marianne Hammocks. Nice thing about that place is Marianne gets in the hammocks with you. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
You know who invented the hammock, Homer?
No.
That's something for you to do. Find that out.
But again, Homer's talking about an idea. It's really stupid to most people, but, you know, obviously Hank's got other things on his mind, but he's going along with it and he's playing.
This is so good. Again, this is all happening in a way that the way they present this is this supervillain shit that's happening in the background is very much the biggest part of this whole story. but it's barely seen. It's literally just happening in the background while this insignificant hammock conversation is occurring. And again, Homer is entirely oblivious to it. This room that he's in, it should be blatantly obvious what's happening, but he's completely content to look out the window, scratching his ass and just enjoying the view. And the most perfect part of all of it, there's that word again, is the way that Albert Brooks is able to cut back and forth from his menacing supervillain tone talking to the UN back to casual hammock chat.
It's fantastic. This guy's mind is churning a mile a minute.
It's so good. It's so good. And that is actually going to bring us to the end of our second act. We'll be back for the conclusion of You Only Move Twice.
In a hammock.
And now it's time for our favorite part of the show. What's that say? Ads and sponsorship. Ugh, this is gonna be a real nightmare. Okay, what do you got for me? Patreon.com? What the hell is that? And they just give us money for it? Oh, if only we had that around in the 70s. Make sure you ask your mommies and daddies to send money to Best Darn Diddly at patreon.com so they can drive a dump truck full of money up to our houses. Uh-oh, I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud.
We start out our third act with Homer at work looking for some sugar for his coffee. And the funny part about this is as he's kind of wandering around with his mug, we notice there are just a lot of employees that seem to be armed in this facility with very large weapons.
But I like, even the guard knows Homer's first name and is nice to him. Like, he literally cannot be in a more perfect work situation.
Yeah, it's like a very, very non-toxic environment. Everybody's super supportive. Like, there's a lot of positives about this company. There really are.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's be real, they're successful. Spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
When Homer asks the guard for where he can get some sugar, the guard points him through this sealed metal door that looks super important. He walks through. Inside, there's all of these, like, control panels and scientists and more people with guns. And there's, like, a nuclear generator being built. There's a lot of stuff happening. And when Homer walks up to Hank, he's greeted, "By the way, Homer, what's your least favorite country? Italy or France?"
France.
Nobody ever says Italy. And during this, Hank is setting the coordinates for some sort of laser-controlled weapon.
You have any sugar around here?
Sugar? Sure! And Hank starts fumbling through his pockets, reaching, and he pulls out a handful of sugar, like no packets or anything. Yeah. There you go. Sorry it's not in packages. Want some cream? And he starts digging his hands down in his pockets again.
No.
Okay, that's it. That's the one. I'm picking it right there. That is
well, because he almost takes it.
Where would that cream come from, Richie? That's the question.
But I just love Homer because, like, Homer's about to say yes, but he goes, no.
No. Once again, things are going great for Homer, but we do a flash through the rest of the family and see that things are not as great. We get another instance of Marge sipping wine, which, by the way, I brought it up earlier, and I think I forgot to dive into it a little bit more, but that joke is actually, the Marge drinking joke was the most debated joke in this episode. They weren't sure that they wanted to go through with it. They were worried about a lot of how it would play, but they only had 45 seconds of time available for Marge's story, trying to give everybody something, and they also had to keep in mind that usually a lot of Marge's stories would come from things that she would interact with or people she would interact with in Springfield, and they did not have that available. So they went with the Marge drinking joke, and I have to say I absolutely love the reveal of that. So I thought it was a really, really good joke for Marge, especially keeping in mind 45 seconds is a pretty tight place to have to try to work something funny in.
Well, and the way they do it is where it just goes like, dun, 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 dun.
Right.
Dun. And it's just when she takes like one sip.
Right. Just
it's not like she's chugging it and then they're doing that.
And again, the music is trying to paint the picture that she's drinking more than she actually is, as we'll find out. Back at school, Bart is playing musical chairs. They're marching around in circles singing, I like me, I like me, I'm as good as I can be, with a smile and a wave and a happy melody. I'm as good as... And the teacher scratches that record as she pulls the needle off, and all of the kids go diving into chairs successfully. And I do mean all of them, because there are at least 4 or 5 more chairs than are actually needed for the number of players. So this is very, very much a remedial version of merry-go, whatever the hell this thing is, musical chairs.
And
Maybe
Bart
I'm
doesn't go
remedial.
diving for a chair, though.
Yeah, Bart just doesn't care. Hooray! Everyone's a winner!
Oh.
He's absolutely miserable. At least things are still going well for Lisa. She's still enjoying all of the nature, walking around and actually sniffing the flowers.
Achoo!
Uh-oh. Well, that's just the one, so she then goes and smells another flower.
Achoo!
At this point, Lisa's nose is very, very red, and she has a very bad realization.
I'm allergic to everything.
She sees that chipmunk that she had such a good time with earlier, and she looks...
Somehow escaped.
Yeah, I guess it was a different chipmunk, good point. But the chipmunk actually looks back and is super cute for just a moment before blowing a bunch of dandelions right in her face, causing her to have a huge allergic reaction.
Achoo! Achoo! Achoo!
And Lisa runs out of the forest, sneezing and basically wheezing as she can barely breathe at this point.
Not looking good for the Simpsons clan.
All we have left is Homer, who we're back at work with, and he's actually taking a break from all of his motivating that he's been doing to buy a snack from the break room. And this is
from the same, room that he had to go get sugar from earlier, where it's, sealed behind all these huge metallic doors.
Right. Only this time it seems that Hank is having some sort of business meeting, but how it goes down is Homer is in the background, once again, oblivious to everything that's happening. And in the background, the animation department on their own added this sequence where he just keeps trying to put the dollar in the machine and it keeps spitting it back out so it would give him something to focus on. And in the foreground, we see Hank Scorpio is interrogating a man that looks and sounds a lot like James Bond, though very much in the script it is James Bont with a T. Ingenious, isn't it, Mr. Bont?
Scorpio, you're totally mad.
Ha! I wouldn't point fingers, you jerk.
So, do you expect me to talk?
I don't expect anything from you, except to die, and be a very cheap funeral. You're gonna die now.
Very much a Goldfinger-esque moment here.
So much so. And we have James Bont is strapped to a metal table with a laser slowly, of course, just like good old James Bond movies where...
No. It's just like the Itchy and Scratchy episode. Get it right.
Fair. But you gotta give the guy some time to escape, and sure enough, he does. He manages to wiggle one hand free and get a quarter that he is able to then flick at exactly the right angle to cause the laser to divide into 4, shooting all of his shackles in perfect unison.
It's cut through this metallic table, but it doesn't cut through a freaking quarter.
Right. So James Bond starts to flee, and wouldn't you know, the exit is right by the snack machine. Hank yells out, "Stop him! He's supposed to die!"
Huh?
Nice work, Homer! Am I proud of you?
Well...
When you go home tonight, there's gonna be another story on your house. I love that line again so much.
But it gets so dark because Scorpio and Homer walk away and all the guards come up behind them and you don't see them actually kill Bont, but you see them point their guns at the ground and start shooting.
Oh, Bont is dead. Yeah,
Yeah,
super
he's
dead.
absolutely dead.
Absolutely dead. But Homer is being rewarded, apparently with a new story on his house, which is the greatest reward ever, probably. I don't know. That's really funny. Back at their now 3-story house, we see the rest of the family, though, really is just dying, miserable. I'm allergic to everything here. My nose is so stuffed up I can't even taste Mom's delicious boiled celery.
Wait a minute, Miles. I just got that joke finally after all these years. There's going to be another story on your house. I thought it meant like a news story. I always felt like, how is that a reward for home?
That, honest to God, that's one of my favorite things about this podcast is I know those moments are few and far between, but every once in a while we come across a joke like that where it just clicks and you're like, oh my God, I've been watching this show for years, and that just happened to the Whiz Kid, folks.
That makes it so much better now. That makes it so much more funny.
What a great episode we have here.
Oh.
So yeah, Lisa's stuffed up, and Marge is also not doing so hot.
I've been so bored since we moved here. I found myself drinking a glass of wine every day. I know doctors say you should drink a glass and a half, but I just can't drink that much. So she's fine.
Again, that's such a good joke. I was surprised to find that it was so hotly debated just because I think it lands so well.
Yeah, they make it look like it's a super dark drinking habit, and it's literally just a glass of wine.
Less than what the doctor recommends. Well, at least the Simpson men are doing fine. Right, Bart? You haven't even gotten in trouble at school.
I can't get in trouble at school. They put me in the remedial class. I'm surrounded by arsonists and kids with mittens pinned to their jackets all year round.
But Homer is protesting. We've got it great here. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually good at my job. My team is way ahead of the weather machine and germ warfare divisions. And Homer still doesn't get what he's doing.
That's we have the family say it, Miles. Homer, we want to go back to Springfield.
And once again, we find this is classic Simpsons right here, folks. Like, this right here is the position that a lot of these episodes find themselves in when it gets to the climax, where one of the characters, often Homer, has to decide, is he going to choose what's best for him or for his family? And once again, Homer chooses his family, which you have to give credit to. He often does end up making that choice.
Well, to be fair, he's not really going to have a job anymore in a little while, so...
I don't know. I think that he could have continued to move on. I mean, they're successful at this project, but that doesn't mean there won't be another one in the future. I think
he'd have to move again, is what I mean.
Oh, I see. Well, that would have only been twice, so that could have counted.
That would be a third time if you go back to Springfield. Boom! Change the title.
That's what I'm saying. He wouldn't go back to Springfield if he went the second time.
I get what you're saying. But Maggie would still not have magical powers.
So Homer walks into the boss's office once again, only this time it is absolutely a war scene. There is gunfire everywhere. It seems that the U.S. military has invaded his bunker, and they're trying to stop him from launching his doomsday device.
And then you get the classic, like, right-hand woman of James Bond villains tumbling around and twisting people's necks with their legs.
So actually, they said that pretty much every shot that happens in the background is a reference to a James Bond movie in some way. Like, you nailed one of them, the woman doing the fighting with her legs, that was from one of the films. Like, there's each and every sequence that happens here is from one of the movies. And it's to the point where there's like too many to name. And admittedly, I enjoy James Bond movies, but I am by no means a James Bond expert. I could not even name all of the films if I had to. I've probably seen most of them.
I used to really enjoy the 14 Days of 007 around Christmas time, and that would be the one time a year I'd watch them, but like they've changed that so much over the last like 15 years that it doesn't feel like it's that way anymore.
Fair. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff's happening a lot of fun stuff is happening in the background, but once again, Homer is completely oblivious to it.
Say, what's going on?
I'm having a little trouble with the government.
Oh, those jerks always walking over the small businessman. Don't get me started about the government. I got a little problem. You see, my family wants to move back to Springfield.
Let them go. You'll stay here with me. We'll go bowling.
Which Homer would absolutely love.
And as a Burning Man runs by in the background, what's bothering them?
Nothing big. It's just a lot of the little things.
And Hank has a grenade in his hand that he pulls the pin on. Well, you can't argue with the little things. It's the little things that make up life. And then he throws the grenade, killing like 6 people. Homer, you gotta do what's best for your family.
And then he actually tells him that he thinks he should move back with his family too, which like I thought was a very poignant thing for him to say.
That's a very good point. And Homer is the thing here too is they do once again a great job with the animation where Homer's expression here, I mean even the way he walks, you can tell he's dreading each step as he has to walk up to his boss and quit his dream job.
Yeah, but I actually really, even though he's massacring people, I love that moment between Hank and Homer, because even amidst everything going on, he's still being a nice guy, at least to Homer.
Yeah, it goes back to, again, what you said at the very top of the show, in many, many ways. Hank Scorpio is a great friend to Homer, despite being a evil super villain, essentially.
It's a weird dichotomy here.
It is. As Homer says farewell to Hank, there's an announcement over the PA.
T-minus 14 seconds.
Homer, if you need anything, you call me.
All right. What's the number?
I've never had to call my own company. Someone will tell you upstairs. But Homer, on your way out, if you want to kill somebody, it would help a lot. And this is probably the most iconic moment from this scene. Almost absolutely going to be the image I probably use for the icon for this episode. Hank Scorpio grabs and straps on a flamethrower and then starts going to work on all of these government agents that are after him.
Laughing.
Maniacally laughing. Like, again,
yes.
So total supervillain.
My favorite part about the end of that, Miles, after the flamethrower, is as Homer's walking out, a grenade rolls over towards him, and he nonchalantly kicks it away. And I have a feeling when it explodes, it probably does exactly what Hank wanted him to, and probably kills some people.
True, and again, Homer is completely oblivious. It's almost as if he just kicks it because he's dragging his feet on the way out, and it accidentally comes into contact. It is not an intentional... It's not a violent act by any stretch of the imagination.
Even though it violently probably kills a lot of people.
Yeah. So now it's time for that Simpsons reset. Once again, we cut back to the family, headed home to Springfield. They get back to their house, which I do really appreciate. The lawn is overgrown. As we sit here recording, I literally just got a notice saying I have to mow my fucking lawn because it's overgrown currently.
It's been raining a lot over here lately.
Oh my god, the rain has been intense over here. So yeah, the grass just shot up like a foot. But either way, I know that pain all too well. They rip that abandoned board off of the front door, and to their surprise, they find Otto camping out inside. He just has to scoop up his girlfriend, and he gets out of their hair, though.
Hey, Crystal, wake up! It's funny that his girlfriend's name's Crystal.
It really is. As the family arrives home and Otto and his girlfriend leave, almost immediately they receive a telegram from Hank Scorpio, and Homer reads it, and it's Hank's voice. Project Arcturus couldn't have succeeded without you. This will get you a little closer to that dream of yours. It's not the Dallas Cowboys, but it's a start. Drop me a line if you're on the East Coast. Hank Scorpio. And we pan out and see that there is an entire football team doing very, very poorly. In fact, one of the players is flat out tripping over his own feet. That player happens to be wearing the number 7, which is the number of famed Broncos quarterback John Elway. And Homer has one of his most iconic lines, and again, one that I see memed all the time.
Aw, the Denver Broncos.
I think owning the Denver Broncos is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, explain to me why it isn't.
You just don't understand football, Marge.
And that brings us to the end of our third act. A couple other things I want to throw in real quick here. One, there's a stack of newspapers on the front doorstep that shows that Hank Scorpio actually did succeed in his plan, and he annihilated and took over the East Coast.
Mission successful, all because Homer tackled a loafer at work.
And I also want to talk about the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys, because there's a lot to unpack about this joke. You see, this episode debuted in March 1996. In the early 90s, there is no doubt that the Dallas Cowboys were one of the most dominant teams in NFL history during that run. However,
they had just won a Super Bowl.
They had won the Super Bowl in 95.
92, 93, and 95.
So this is the year 96, and we see that the Dallas Cowboys actually do not even make the playoffs with a 10-6 record. They then do even more poorly the following year in 97, where they dropped to 6-10. In 98, they do make the playoffs with that same 10-6, but they are eliminated in the first round. Meanwhile, the Denver Broncos were absolute trash in the early 90s. They only had one playoff appearance, which they were eliminated in the first round during that. However, in this very season of 1996, the season that this episode debuted during, the Denver Broncos had a very impressive 13-3 record. The following year, they only went 12-4, but that didn't stop them from winning the Super Bowl. And finally, in 1998, they went an impressive 14-2 and won the Super Bowl again.
Back to back.
And Matt Groening likes to think that maybe, just maybe, they goaded the Broncos into getting their shit together.
Or that means Homer is a really good owner.
Also very possible. It might have been his calling.
Well, this was great, Miles, because my dad was such a huge Broncos fan. So when this joke first played out, I razzed him a lot about it. And then a year later, they won a Super Bowl, and a year later, they won another one.
Another one again, yeah. One more thing from this one before we're done with the episode, though, because you see, the end credits have their own song. It's Hank Scorpio's theme.
Scorpio, he'll sting you with his dreams of power and wealth. Beware of Scorpio. His twisted twin obsessions are his plot to rule the world, and his employees' health. He'll welcome you into his lair, like the nobleman welcomes his guests, with free dental care and a stock plan that helps you invest. But beware of his generous pensions, plus 3 weeks paid vacation each year. And on Fridays, the lunchroom serves hot dogs and burgers and beer. He loves German beer.
And again, I mentioned earlier that song was actually written by Ken Keeler. And there's another last fun fact from the commentary before we call it on this episode. Ken Keeler, when he was writing that song, was actually under the impression that he was going to have 3 more seconds of time than he actually did. So the song, that is the song he wrote, but it ended up having to be rushed towards the end, and it's always really bothered him because he feels it sounds very rushed. I don't think I would have noticed it if he had not have pointed it out, but after being told that it was rushed, you can kind of tell where it would have made more sense for those last 3 or 4 lines to be a little bit more drawn out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Richie, that is the end of the episode. Do you have anything, or did that book have anything else that you wanted to talk about before we get out of here?
Well, the one thing we did not mention that my guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, does bring up is even though Homer hates the Denver Broncos, well, he doesn't hate the Denver Broncos, but he's disappointed in the Denver Broncos. It mentions that when the Simpsons were trying to move to get away from Sideshow Bob, he asked if his name could be John Elway. So I wanted to point that out. However, I say that he could still, like me, I enjoyed watching John Elway play, even though the Cowboys are my favorite team. So you can admire somebody without them being like your favorite team. So I feel like the guidebook was trying to say that may or may not quite add up, but I think it's still viable.
Maybe Elway was Homer's like fantasy star and like carried him through a season or something.
Maybe
fantasy
so.
Football, I mean, of course.
Maybe he always bet on or against John Elway, so who knows?
Could be.
But yeah, man, this episode, we've been talking about it the whole time, and I can't say enough about this episode, man. I can definitely say after I've seen this recently on FXX in the past, and even watching it again so quickly after it's been, a month, maybe 2, it's it's just too damn funny, man. Like, there's so much charisma and there's so much heart at the end, and you feel that we just had this in Homer Palooza, where he has to pick his family over what he wants. And it's just, I don't know, man. I think it is back up above Lemon of Troy right now for me. I don't know. The true test of this episode will be in our season finale show, when it's literally the furthest possible length away outside of Treehouse of Horror for the end. And if we still think this is the best episode of the season at the end of the season, then I'll know that this one is like fully cemented. It's always been at least in my top 5 episodes of all time, if not top 3. But I'm feeling it right now more than Lemon of Troy.
I would agree with you all the way across the board, and I would also mention that IMDb does rate it at a 9.2, which is very, very high. I cannot honestly remember if that's the highest we've had rated thus far. I think that might be the same one as Dental Plan, Lisa Needs Braces, that whole one.
Which this episode feels much better to me than that one did.
I would agree with that as well. You had mentioned the charisma of Hank Scorpio, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. Hank Scorpio is actually set to return as the villain in the Simpsons movie, but as they were writing the script, they just decided that he was too fucking likable for that role. Albert Brooks still played the villain, but they changed it to Russ Cargill, who was he was created for the Simpsons movie. They've been asked numerous times if they would ever consider bringing Hank Scorpio back. However, it was so dependent on the ad-libbing by Albert Brooks that they feel like they captured lightning in a bottle, and they would be afraid that if they tried to do it again, it might just not do justice to the character.
I completely agree. I do not want to see Hank Scorpio again. I would love to hear those tapes of all the ad-libbing, but like I feel like it's going to be a disservice to the character at this point if you try to bring him back just for that reason.
Agreed. But that will do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Once again, Richie and I want to thank you so much for tuning in each and every week. Thank you for doing all the other podcast things. Please share this with your friends. If you know anyone you think might enjoy this show, please let them know about it. That helps out a lot. And make sure you come back and join us again next week, where Richie and I are going to be going 12 rounds with the Homer They Fall.
Best Darn Diddly, where dreams come true. Your dreams may differ from those of Best Darn Diddly, its subsidiaries, and shareholders.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
We are getting weird here in Season 8. We're doing something a little bit different here. We are correcting an error. So, first of all, please, everybody, follow us on Twitter at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. And I want to let you know, because we only date things twice, we said this episode debuted on March 11th, 1996, but it actually debuted on November 3rd, 1996. So pardon us for dating twice.
Now it's perfect.